to be on the show, Brian.
So we have a lot to talk about with regard to Colorado specifically, and especially the impacts from the federal budget bill. But I want to talk about some breaking news first, and that is that we found out today, just a few hours before this recording, that the Texas Democrats are going to be heading back from their quorum break in California, in Chicago, Illinois, to go back to Texas. And their goal here was to try and raise national attention to the fight that we're in right now, which is that Republicans are trying to gerrymander seats, not just in Texas, but also in Missouri, in Indiana, in Florida, and I'm sure there are a raft of other Republican trifecta states that are looking to, curry favor with Donald Trump when he asks for something. And so we've seen a few instances where Democratic governors across the country are looking to push back against this blatant power grab by Republicans. You are in charge of one of the few states that Democrats have as a weapon at our disposal. This is a Democratic trifecta in Colorado. And so what steps can or will be taken in your state to counteract what's happening, the blatant power grab that's happening at the hands of Trump and these Republicans?
Well, look, I think first of all, what Republicans are trying to do in Texas, perhaps other states, is wrong. It's unpopular. Frankly, I think it hopefully will help our statewide candidate for Senate in Texas to help put that in play. This is the kind of blatant power grab that voters, unaffiliated voters of both parties, they just consider it the height of arrogance for politicians. In our state, and I supported this, the voters passed a constitutional amendment that took redistricting out of the hands of politicians, out of the hands of the legislature, out of the hands of the governor, and constitutionally put it with a nonpartisan redistricting commission. And so they've done their work. They'll convene again in 2031 to draw the districts for 2032. And we have competitive districts here. I'm confident that we'll pick up because of some of the stuff we're going to talk about here, Brian. The terrible H.R. 1 bill that one of our congressmen, Gabe Evans, voted for, swing district. I think we're going to pick that one up. We have a chance of picking up another one as well.
So, California and New York also have independent redistricting commissions. And I think the goal was, and rightfully so, to try and offer up these good government solutions in hopes that by doing it in these Democratic weapons, we would see some reciprocation in these Republican states, in these red states. Not only did we not see any reciprocation for these good government steps that these Democratic states have taken, yours included, but we're seeing kind of the complete opposite. I mean, we're seeing these Republicans take already gerrymandered maps and gerrymandering them even further. And so will there come a point? I mean, we're going to talk about the impacts, the dangerous impacts of HR 1. That is what happens when you have, entrenched Republican rule where Democrats aren't even able to have the same option to be able to win as Republicans do. And so will there come a point where we're watching these Republicans rig the rules of the game in their favor that you would do what Gavin Newsom is doing in California, move to step away from these independent redistricting commissions so that we're not unilaterally disarming in the states where we have the power to do something?
Well, I think from Colorado's perspective, I'm confident we can deliver on 1 to 2 seats for a Democratic majority. That's what we want to do. I think all of our incumbents are safe. We're on the offense. We're going to pick up 1 to 2 seats. If you're talking about nationally, I think, again, what Abbott is doing, what the Republicans are doing, if they try it in Missouri, if they try it in other states, very unpopular, right? Very unpopular. People want to elect their politicians. They don't want politicians selecting people and taking away their voice in a general election. I hope and I think, based on HR 1, it's going to be a good Democratic year anyway. I hope it's a +7, +8 year with all the redistricting shenanigans that can add even more. It could turn a +7 Democratic year to a +9 Democratic year just because of the arrogance, the height of arrogance that Republicans have in disenfranchising people by effectively watering down their vote in a general election.
Well, I understand that it's unpopular, and I agree that it's unpopular. But the reality is that in large part, these politicians who are answering to Trump are not really interested in whether it's popular or not. They're interested in consolidating power for themselves. And so there comes a point where even if Republicans are passing deeply unpopular legislation, even if they're not responsive to the will of the voters, that it's going to be increasingly difficult to even have the opportunity to win in these districts by virtue of how they've been drawn. And so is there anything that could happen in the broader political environment that would make you rethink Colorado's allegiance to the Independent Redistricting Commission and recognize that we don't have that many weapons to wield at our disposal? Colorado is one, and that in this broader fight to be able to protect democracy from what is a very blatant power grab from Republicans, that you would move to support not just the Independent Redistricting Commission, but kind of view Colorado's stance in this broader fight as, okay, we have to push back against what are anti-democratic moves at the hands of these Republicans.
Well, again, this isn't the first time Texas tried to do this. They actually did it, if you recall. They did a decade redistricting. I believe it was when President Bush was president. And they tried to squeeze a few seats. And then again, it came around to bite them in the sense that they spread themselves thinner. And by the end of the decade, into the next decade, with Democratic shifts, Democrats won, like Colin Allred and others. We won swing seats. We beat Pete Sessions. We beat a number of others. He's back in a different district, but a number of Republicans lost. We gained seats in Texas. And I think that the voters are smart at the end of the day, Brian. They see through this. And again, swing voters, unaffiliated voters really don't like this kind of sheer arrogance. I think if the focus, stays on these Republican efforts to take our voice away, coupled with we need to get into HR1 and the damage it causes, you could have a +7 year that turns into a +9 Democratic year. And then you're talking 40, 45 seats, no matter how they draw them.
Is there any concern as we look toward the prospect of the Supreme Court gutting Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act? If we see, now we're talking about not just states that may be redrawing maps because Donald Trump told them to and trying to squeeze out a few districts here and there in places like Texas, Indiana, Missouri, and Florida. Now, if Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act is overturned, now we're looking at all of these opportunity districts in states across the country. If we see a wave of mid-cycle map redraws in the aftermath of a possible Supreme Court ruling, would that change your thinking at all? Like, I guess the broader question is there anything in the national environment that would make you think differently about Colorado using an independent redistricting commission? And do you understand what I'm saying about like the prospect of unilaterally disarming because we're showing good government? We're taking good government steps in states where
Yeah.
we have majorities, but Republicans are just flouting the rules openly in their states.
You should talk to more of a cartographer, a demographic specialist. Again, from the Colorado perspective, there is no process that would allow for it, so it's not something we thought about. Our state constitution has the process that cannot be amended in an off year, so there is no mechanism to go to the ballot this year. Like California is doing, it would be at the earliest, it would be 26, which would almost be the end of the decade anyway for 28. Again, that's not something we've really looked at in Colorado because we have a constitutional process for it. And it's one that I wish went to other states like Texas, like Florida. I wish they had constitutional processes for nonpartisan redistricting commissions to take the power out of the hands of the Republicans in that case, or out of the hands of the Democrats, put it in the hands of folks who draw maps that make sense and allow for competition to occur.
Is a 2026 constitutional amendment process something that you would consider if we were in a national environment where things continue to degrade precipitously like they are now?
Well, our goal here, and I mentioned this, Brian, we have 1 to 2 seats that we are focused on picking up for the Democrats, the 8th congressional district and the 3rd congressional district. That's a district that Lauren Boebert did represent, but she
Right.
would have lost and she fled across the state. Her old district is competitive. And of course, there's one that we should win. So we're going to do our part from Colorado. I want a Democratic majority in Congress. We will furnish 1 to 2 seats of that majority, and hopefully that'll be part of the total that makes Hakeem Jeffries the next speaker.
All right, so let's look at HR1, which is the budget bill that Republicans were able to pass out. Can you talk about the biggest impacts that that's going to have on your state in particular? Because, of course, Republicans aren't looking to talk about this thing anymore. They got what they needed, which is their tax cut for millionaires and billionaires and a wealth of funding for ICE, which, we're seeing the consequences of that right now. And as far as they're concerned, the bill doesn't exist anymore. But the reality is that the impacts of this bill are going to be far-reaching, especially in the states. So what's it going to look like in Colorado?
It's so bad so quickly in that we had a budget surplus in Colorado. Every Coloradan was set to get a tax refund. We call it a Tabor refund. Every Coloradan would get, $100 or whatever it was. Not only was that surplus wiped out by this bill, but it put us into deficit in the current year because of the concurrent tax changes with state law. So we are now, I've called our legislature back. They're coming on Thursday. They're going to have to cut health care, cut a lot of the things that we care about just because of that bill in the first year. And that's not even getting into what lays ahead. Medicaid cuts, year two, year three, SNAP cuts, SNAP matches, social safety net is going to be devastated. We're not even there yet. That's a couple years out. I had to call them back this year for the year we're currently in, and because unlike Congress, Colorado and most states have to balance our budget. So we were in balance and had a surplus. The minute President Trump signed that bill, and I know we're not alone in this regard, we have a deficit. We're going to fill it. We're going to do it responsibly, but it's going to be even harder to get ready for the Medicaid cuts ahead in the social safety net as we make sure we take care of all Coloradans' healthcare needs.
What kind of an impact is that going to have on folks, not just in each respective district in Colorado, but especially those four Republican districts in Colorado?
Yeah, I mean, this was a very unpopular vote that Gabe Evans, freshman congressperson from a close district that went by a couple thousand votes to the Democrat, a couple thousand votes to the Republican. He owns those cutbacks to health care, to SNAP, the cutbacks in state services. I'm sure he'll be reminded of that during the campaign. We have several great Democrats running for that seat. Third congressional district, Congressman Hurd voted for those cuts as well. So this is going to be an albatross around the neck of all the Republicans that voted for it, especially in rural areas where they've run up numbers the last few years, and both of those districts have some rural areas in them where the rural hospitals and residents are going to be hit the hardest.
How are you dealing with the fact that a lot of the impacts that they put forward for the deep cuts to Medicaid and food assistance were put there purposefully so that they wouldn't take effect until after the midterm elections. So the Republicans had to figure out a way to do some minor offset to their tax breaks for millionaires and billionaires, which already wasn't fully offset because this bill is going to add $4 trillion to the debt. But that notwithstanding, they wanted to make sure to extract the most money out of the poorest Americans and to do so with the least political consequences. And so how are you thinking about this in terms of your messaging to Coloradans, knowing that the worst impacts of this thing aren't even going to happen until after the election by design?
And that's right. And there's going to be a couple $100 million of cuts now, and we're experiencing that. But the cuts will be billions of dollars in year two, in year three, in year four. And of course, you're going to have to pay the piper for these devastating cuts. And I think that while there'll be some people losing health care benefits right away, if they don't renew the tax credits for the health care exchange, we're estimating 100,000 Coloradans will lose their health care. That's only the tip of the iceberg, and it's going to get a lot worse. And it's important to continue to share the story, A, of the people today who are affected, and there are some that are affected as soon as January of this coming calendar year, but B, who's going to be affected in the future if we don't elect a Democratic Congress, Democratic Senate, and change the course.
Can I have your general reaction to the fact that really the people are going to be who are going to be hit the hardest here are the folks who rely on Medicaid and food assistance? These are seniors, these are disabled folks, these are children, these are folks who have illnesses, are in the hospital. Like, the fact that those are the people who were targeted so that people like Elon Musk and Donald Trump could enjoy an even bigger tax break for themselves. Just your general reaction to the fact that this is happening in light of the fact that Trump ran yet another populist campaign where he promised to really feel the pain of the little guy. He was talking about the cost of eggs, the cost of groceries, the cost of rent, got into office. First thing he did was launch a trade war that would exacerbate those high costs, but then, hand himself a tax cut that would benefit people in the top 0.1% of Americans.
And two points on that. One is that all of this budget change makes the deficit far worse. So it's actually increasing the federal deficit, the federal debt, which is a debt on all of us, a debt on the future ability to do things, upward pressure on taxes for everyday Americans. And of course, the tariffs, which are of already, I have two kids school age, already back to school items costing a lot more, 20-30% more. That's just the start of it. I was talking to a major hardware retailer. They're not even able to restock certain parts. They said prices you should change once a year. They went up 3%. They've had prices change 5 times in the last 6 months, 10, 15% each time. And so these are regressive tax increases through tariffs. They're on everyday items that we purchase. It also hurts American competitiveness, manufacturing, ability to export. I heard from folks who are going to build factories here in Colorado, America. They can no longer do that because they can't get the parts and materials they need for manufacturing, and they're going to put their factories overseas instead. So it's hurting jobs, it's costing Americans, and of course, it's bloating our deficit.
Are people recognizing that pain, though, and attributing it to the right people? And I ask because there is a marked difference between the right wing media ecosystem and the left wing media ecosystem. And if the cost of eggs go up half a penny, you'll have everybody from Sean Hannity and Judge Jeanine all the way down to Newsmax, OAN, Ben Shapiro, Dan Bongino, Laura Ingraham, like the whole raft of the right wing media ecosystem will be aligned on this because they are overt partisan political operatives. We don't have the same thing on the left. And so when prices go up 10%, 15% over and over and over as the result of Trump's trade war, there just isn't the same mechanism that we have to get the message out as they have on the right. And so I'm curious, that notwithstanding, are the asymmetry in the media notwithstanding, are people still recognizing that pain is happening and attributing it to the right place?
Well, hopefully they're all watching your show, Brian, and others like you. I mean, really, it's about getting the word out. Look, why do things cost more? It's because of tariffs, plain and simple. That's what's driving inflation, driving costs of consumer goods. Again, it's back to school time. The clothing on our kids' backs, their notebooks. There's import and export components for all of those manufactured overseas. America's been the beneficiary of low-cost goods. That's a good thing. It means the average American has more buying power. What a wonderful thing. That decreases with tariffs. It's a regressive tax. Lowest income, low middle income people pay the highest percentage. Sure, it does hit rich people, but a lot less of their income goes towards items that pay the sales that have tariffs, right? I mean, you can't consume. Elon Musk can't consume proportionally as much as his income. You just you can't buy 10,000 times as much clothing. It just doesn't
Yeah.
make sense. So it's regressive and it hits low and middle income Americans hardest. And that's exactly what tariffs are doing. And I think increasingly people are saying, hey, why are those prices going up? Well, there's one simple reason. It's the taxes that Trump has put in through tariffs.
And finally, let's finish this because you do govern a true swing state here. And so, what has been in your conversations with people across the state? What's been the most potent messaging that you've had in terms of being able to reach people on the other side of the aisle?
Well, in our state, with the HR1 signing, the signing of that bill by President Trump took away your tax refund and force the state to make cuts to health care. And of course, the fact that over 100,000 Coloradans could lose their health care, and that it's upward pressure on costs with the tariffs driving costs of everyday items. So that is what leads to this frustration factor with this administration in Washington. And of course, our state didn't go for Trump in the first place, but his numbers are even lower here today than they were in the election.
All right. Well, Gov, I appreciate your time today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Brian. Take care.